Paul Hackney, S&P Global Platts. Welcome back, Paul.
Hi, good to be back now.
Perfect. So, Paul, very quickly, what's your take on this major drop when it comes to the energy sector?
Certainly, the coronavirus new variant risk is right at the forefront of the market's mind. We've seen that across the markets. There has been in the oil market a little bit of irrational exuberance, I would say, for the last few months. The bull run has been strong, but now what we're seeing is a confluence of factors checking that exuberance. The uncertainty around the coronavirus is one, and the concerns around demand. We've already seen the mobility with lockdowns across Europe that has been taking effect even before this news. Then you've got concerns around supply. You know, we've had the easing of the supply disruption from the US, which was from Hurricane Ida back in August through to November, and we've seen a trickle of crude coming back, which was out 95% up at one point at its peak. So that crude's coming back, and it was now the market is turning its attention to potential stock builds in the first quarter, and that has really shifted the mindset. And I think what's added to that is obviously the strategic petroleum reserves release from the US and an alliance of other consumer countries.
You know what's really interesting, that the United States, Great Britain, China, India, South Korea try to kind of have the same impact after releasing strategic reserves or stockpiles. But as we can see, what is really moving markets when it comes to energy market today is this coronavirus trend. So what's your take on these efforts to lower energy prices, efforts specifically from the Biden administration, but not with a huge success as we can see so far?
Well, I think there was certainly domestic political considerations for the moves from the consumer countries. Inflationary concerns had been gripping these countries, and there was almost a need to show they were doing something about it. But you're right, there has been it's a broader issue here in the market, and realistically, it's still OPEC Plus at the wheel. It's still all eyes on the OPEC Plus meeting next week, and there has been talk before about them potentially freezing that rise of 400,000 barrels a day, and the noise for that to happen is going to grow louder and louder with the uncertainty over demand, as well as the extra release from the consumer countries.
I was wondering what we are seeing today, because you've just mentioned, of course, the OPEC Plus meeting next week, which is going to be extremely important. They have so far two things to deal with. From one side, of course, this common action from several countries to release strategic stockpiles, and on the other side, this new coronavirus strain that we don't know much about so far. So I was wondering, do you think that they're going to, how can I say, change their tactics in terms of output production and output release?
Yeah, certainly. The fundamentals already were suggesting that they could well have frozen even before this current news. There was certainly an element of risk that might happen, and that's the odds of that happening have definitely shortened. The OPEC Plus will be looking at the market and looking at the physical market and seeing it may be too early for them to factor in the demand impact from the new variant. It's come a bit early for us to even really know. This is at the moment what the reaction of the market is certainly certainly factoring the uncertainty. It's certainly a risk-on environment in that sense. But actually, if OPEC Plus is going to look at the fundamentals, then demand, yes, is coming off, but it's still like to be above pre-pandemic levels going into 2022, and that is, in a sense, that shows what a turnaround demand has been. So what I would say is it's very early for OPEC Plus to make any calls, but certainly given what's happening with the SPR releases, and that's going to happen over the next few months, and what they're seeing in the market may well mean they freeze that, put a hiatus on the 400,000 barrel a day increase that they had scheduled in.
Let me ask you one final take. What or how does the bottom look like, in your opinion, in terms of crude oil prices until the end of the year?
Well, I think at the moment it's very early to say. I think there's you've got to say that all eyes are still back on OPEC Plus. They really it's in their, the ball is in their court in terms of how they shape the oil market, and even if the pandemic, the new strain suggests demand is going to be tempered, and we are back to to a phase of lockdowns. I think we've been there once before, and I think it's unlikely with the way vaccines are, the way the governments are in place, that we're not going to go back to the same kind of levels we saw at the back at the start of these things, even with this new strain.
Thank you very much, Paul Hacken, S&P Global Plus. Thank you for joining us, and have a great weekend.
Thanks, you too.